This video was originally recorded August 2017 at the annual Buddha and the Yogis program held at Menla Retreat and Dewa Spa in Phoenicia, New York. To learn more about this annual program, please visit menla.us.
It was in a Star Trek movie where they discovered this entity who had a very pleasant female voice called V'ger, which they called her V'ger because they saw the letters V and then G-E-R on the side of a sort of machine thing at the nexus of this vast entity, which was destroying worlds. The entity was destroying worlds. It was digesting them. Destroying was coming toward the Federation headquarters on Earth. And Captain Kirk and Dr. Spock, they were out there. They had an actor named Frank Converse, who happened to be a friend of mine from when I was little, was playing a sergeant somebody, you know, one of the officers. But he was expendable. He was obviously only in that one movie. Because they couldn't stop this entity. The reason that it was destroying worlds was it wanted to understand everything. And then it particularly was intrigued by human beings. And it wanted to understand them, but then its only way of understanding was to sort of like chew them up and digest them. You know, but then that didn't help. She couldn't understand them by doing that. One said she because it had a female voice, but it was a machine. But really powerful. I mean, it was swallowing galaxies, you know, practically. So then Frank Converse, he volunteered, look, I will merge with you, and you can, I'm not a Vulcan, but I'll merge with you, and then you can understand me, and you don't have to destroy me. But I'm willing, if you do, that's okay, but then you'll know what a human being really is. You know, you'll get into my soul and my emotions and everything, you know. So then the two of them was like a yabum, you know, like a male-female union of, and they turned out Voyager was Voyager that had been sent out from America in the 20th century, you know, 2 or 3 centuries earlier than Star Trek, right? So then the man and the computer merged, you know, in this erotic thing. And then somehow there was kind of like, oh, now I understand. And then it disappeared, you know. But it disappeared with like waves going out like that, so you had the idea that it sort of encompassed everything. And Frank went with her, you know, he disappeared too. Like his ordinary, coarse human body, he dropped completely, but he was a hero. You know? So that sort of was enlightenment or something like that, I think, I'm afraid. Man, male, female, and supercomputer in union. What? It was a Star Trek movie. It was a Star Trek movie. It was the old one, you know, with the old Kirk. It was the old one. Thank you. Oh, those are nice songs. Don't rip it, just leave it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. It's bad for me anyway, reading, I think. Okay. So, I wanted to show you things that you can visualize, but so you have to use your own mind now. So, can you remember, does anybody have, I don't even have the paper for the white Tara thing. We could do that. So, I think you can go into meditation. And, oh, great. Well, yeah, you know, I don't want us to read it though. I want us to just, but thank you. Maybe I will refer to it. So we can go, thank you. We'll go into the meditation and quickly run through the different preparatory steps, which we did yesterday, but this time we're going to do it much quicker. And those preparatory steps are, you know, your sense of the presence of the Guru, coming from all Buddhas, and including all enlightened gods, and then your personal gurus, whoever they were, of whatever tradition or non-tradition. And you think of, but sort of in the context of Tara, you think of the Buddha indivisible from Tara, from the noble Tara. And you think of them as in space, in the sky, and you're sitting in some outdoors on the slope of a mountain facing south with a beautiful lake beneath in your view. And all beings are around you, you're not alone. All the sentient beings are all in human form, and they're all around you. And they're looking at you, and you're looking at the sky, at the field of all your gurus, and in your own life and in history, and that you can imagine. And then light rays flow from them to you, and then all the other beings who are sitting around you, looking at you, they see you start to glow with the light of those gurus, because they're not necessarily looking at the same set of gurus. So that's the starting point. And in that starting point, you feel very encouraged. You're filled with this light and this energy. You feel the confidence and the support that the gurus have in you, in your ability to realize the nature of reality, or more of the nature of reality, and help other beings become more realistic and therefore more contented and more happy. And so you start to then appreciate yourself, and then you remember that even though you don't feel it as a commonsensical thing because you're not familiar with it, you temporarily sort of imagine yourself having been every other kind of life form, and even one very much like yourself, in beginningless previous lives. And you also imagine yourself then as being a worm and a bug, and of beings of non-human beings of their various kinds. And you sort of realize how amazing that you got to be human this time, and how pleased you are that you are a human now and not a worm, or not a groundhog or like a warthog or whatever. You're none of these other kind of creatures that you have been, and you're this amazing human. So the preciousness of your particular human life. And then among humans, you're a human who's heard about yoga. In its deepest meaning, as you know, yoga means your union of yourself with the highest, most complete, most benevolent, most beautiful, most true reality. That's the ultimate union that yoga means, yoking, joining. And then you feel how precious you are, and you feel that you're worthy of this trust and this blessing received from these gurus. But then you immediately remember that you're going to die. You won't keep this human life that you have forever. And having visualized all the different possible life forms that you've been, you sort of really don't want to go back to some of them. So you become aware of the fact that you will lose this one. And then you intensify that by being aware that you don't know when it will be. Could be any time. And then you focus down on your more subtle level of your being, your sort of inner consciousness, your inner soul being, by thinking about how that's the thing that was all those other beings that moved from body to body. Its continuum is what will become a Buddha. My relative super subtle self will be continuously embedded in subtle selves and coarse selves, again and again in different forms. And unless I can be conscious from the super subtle self level and orient myself in a positive way from the super subtle self level, then I have no guarantee what will be my trajectory upon death. So those are the three roots of meditating on death. You're definitely going to, you don't know when it will be. When it is happen, you want to be able to be conscious at the subtle level. You want to at least know how to lucidly dream, because you're going to be in a kind of dream transition. The dream world is the post-death Bardo world is like a dream world. You have like a dream body in it. So you want to be able to shape that body and not just have it react to any kind of circumstance. And there are circumstances in the between where one hallucinates frightening things, and one meets with sort of seem to be demons and things like that, dangerous places. Like a dream, you don't know where you might go in a dream. Some dreams. And then think about how any position where you're still thinking that you're one thing and the world is almost another thing, you're it, and it is just that, is going to be, any situation like that, even of a God, is not going to be good enough. Because it will not be permanent, and it is not total, and there's like so much difficulties outside, and also opposing you is infinite others. So being something great just by yourself without interconnecting with others leaves you in still a kind of opposition to them, which at a subtle level is a deep suffering, called the suffering of composition or the suffering of creation. Most subtle one. So you decide liberation is what you want. You want enlightenment. That's the only worthy goal, not just some other status in another life. And then you realize how evolutionary causality on all these different planes is just really pretty inconceivable and difficult. And so you really make a strong resolve to make this your main focus in life. And you lower the priority of all your other foci in life. You don't not attend to them, your duties and responsibilities and your this and that. You attend to them, but they're not your supreme priority, that's all. None of them. And then you feel better when you feel that kind of transcendent renunciation, where you're determined to emerge, you're determined to transcend. You're determined to find the true joy at the heart of life, at the heart of yourself. You're willing to give the benefit of the doubt to those who say there is such a thing like Satchit Ananda, the Upanishads say, Satchit Ananda, the Vedanta says. The Brahma Sutra says, Satchit Ananda, being awareness and bliss. But Buddhists would say voidness, awareness and bliss. The same. Ultimately. So then you feeling better, you then realize other beings are wasting their time, getting strong, getting rich, doing this, doing that, gaining status, trying to be famous, etc., and they're ignoring their inner growth, their inner evolution, and even they're willing to do bad things that harm their inner sense of connection and connectedness, in order to get ahead in whatever those lesser goals that they're focused on. And therefore they're feeling subconsciously they're off base, off balance, they're not focused, they feel anxious, they feel something's wrong, they're like Neo in the beginning of the Matrix, like can't put their finger on it, but something's not right. In moments of quiet that comes to them. And so you feel compassion for them. And then you go through the sevenfold steps: mother recognition, remembrance of gratitude, determination to repay gratitude, infinite love, infinite compassion, and universal responsibility, those 6. And then the 7th one is where you become bodhisattva and you say, my priority is to become enlightened for the sake of all the beings, to bring them all on with me out of suffering. Bring them into the nirvana, into their own nirvana reality, actually, in a non-dual way you can say it like that. And then when you've done that, you realize you've got to gain wisdom to do that. And so then you start to focus on yourself and on the selves of things, the essence and the substance of things. And you investigate them, and you use your vipassana, your critical insight concentration, to analyze them and look for their core essence or their essence. And what you find out is that their core and their essence is not any kind of substance, any kind of material thing, or any kind of consciousness entity, but it is pure bliss, pure compassion. There's a wonderful expression in the Chakra Tantra, Prajaparamita Sutra, Nagarjuna repeats it a lot, Shunyata Karuna Garbham, meaning emptiness, the womb of compassion, or emptiness, the essence of compassion. Donyin Ningbo, Ningje Ningbojen. In Tibetan it actually translates in a very alliterative, beautiful way. Donyin Ningje Ningbojen. 3 Ning words. Donyin Ningje Ningbojen. Shunyata Karuna Garbham. Okay? So then you do that, and then you go through your body-mind complex, and you analyze a chair or the table or the planet or whatever, it's any theory, and it all comes to pieces. Go down to the atom, do some quantum thought experiment work, and everything will disappear. You eventually have the experience of disappearing, and then when you come back from that experience, since you don't fall into it and be trapped in it by absolutizing it because of your sense of understanding about the relationality of everything, you then are back in what is called dreamlike aftermath samadhi, where because you've seen everything disappear and you've disappeared within it, your presence back in amongst the things seems like something less solid, more more like ephemeral. Illusory, they say, or magical. And then, since you then see the world that way, and also you've seen other beings and realize that the way they suffer, the way they solidify their suffering, of their solidified consciousness, because of their thinking of themselves as an absolute. Because they didn't go for this effort to find that absolute and then not find it and deal with that. They didn't do that. So then you see them, but you see them disappearing when you disappear. And so then you realize that the way they think I'm really suffering is mistaken, and they're only suffering. They're unreally suffering, but it is still suffering. And you feel great compassion for that, and they don't need to suffer like that. And you're able to feel the optimism and the sort of surge of energy, blissful energy of figuring out, without being discouraged, how to help them find their way out of their self-enclosure. And you're able to do that because you feel kind of bliss. But you also don't want to delay about it. You want it to be done soon. You're not willing to sit forever while they're in that mess. So then you encounter the jewel of the Tantra, the jewel of the truly the esoteric and most interior science and technology that the human beings have ever devised. And you decide, I want to collapse. Thousands of lifetimes of being a bodhisattva and reaching the state of where I can help all beings become free of suffering. I want to do it in 1 life, or 7 lives, or 3 lives, or 16 lives. And I'm told I can if I really focus down. And 16 lives may seem like a lot of lives when you used to think of yourself as only having the one, or being the one. But when you're open to the idea of having infinite numbers of lives, endless numbers of lives, 16 is really short time. As long as those 16 you can keep making progress, so that means you have to, before you die, in this life you have to at least develop some way of traveling in the between to where you want to go. Yeah, by the way, the subtle body, remember, is Vayu, Nadi, and Bindu. So none of those are mind, actually. Those are considered body. And the mind are the 3 luminance, radiance, and immanence. The 3 luminances. Luminance itself, luminance radiance, and luminance immanence, The moon, sun, and the dark, and the black. But each of those 3, or those 3 together, have 80 instinctual surges in them. In the sense that for the ordinary person, because that is the unconscious of the person, and they're filled with like primal surges of hostility or greed, or there's a very funny list of 80 different kind of impulses that are there. And that's why a normal person just sort of rides around in their mind when they head toward death or the clear light. They don't really see the plane of moonlit space, a plane of sunlit space, a plane of darklit space, shining darkness. They don't really experience that because they're all caught up in these surges, in these instinctual impulses. And there's 80 of those, actually. And actually that connects a little bit probably to, like in the Book of the Dead, they have all these different animal-headed goddesses, the 27 thises and the 34 that's, and etc. I forget the numbering, but they are kind of personifying. They are, each one of them is dominated a particular one of the 80 surges. I'm sure you could put it together that way. I haven't actually, but I bet you could. Because you're in the unconscious there, and you archetypalize all those kind of surges, and in that way somehow gain some freedom from them and the ability to channel the energy that they encode, but in a way where they're not pushing you, where you're just moving with them according to conscious choice. That's what that's what the technique is about. So then you decide, I want to do Tantra, right? So then in Tantra, what could be better than to meet Arya Tara in her 21 main forms, but there's innumerable forms of Tara. And so when you're interested in healing, you meet the white Tara. If that's your sort of the activity that you're interested in, peace and healing, and you need that. So you do white Tara, the Chinta Chakra Tara that we meditated on. And so the way of imagining the presence of Tara is like she comes in the sky, then, sort of changing the scene. You had all the gurus and the heavenly hosts in the sky above you. And if you want to have a sense of thinking that's there, you should always feel that when you meditate, by the way, that your teachers are present, because their attention and their awareness, in fact, is present in a true spiritual teacher to all their students all the time. But when you imagine them in some sort of Obi-Wan Kenobi form, you're therefore really tuning into the fact that you are connected to them by having learned from them. And so then in front of them, all of the miraculous, all of the compassion and the bliss and the miraculous wonder-working energy crystallizes into white Tara, Chinta Chakra. And so then you just imagine she's sitting there smiling at you beautifully, holding that, that gesture, and holding the stalk of a lotus, of a lily or lotus or peony that she over her shoulder, sitting in front of you there. And she's in her legs are crossed, so she's in a healing mode. And then so the first thing you do when such an honored guest come is you offer water. You offer them to wash their hands. You offer them to rinse the dust from their mouth, to take some water. You offer them to wash their feet. You then offer all kind of cloth, a nice towel for them, a silken or a fine cotton towel for them to dry their hands and touch their face with. And then you offer perfume, and you offer flowers, and you offer incense, and you offer food, and you offer music. Whatever the guest likes, you imagine offering that. And you then just enjoy being bathed in the glittering white light emanation from Tara. And from her special beacon, like a lighthouse beacon, is the Tam letter on the wheel at her heart. Tam. You can see it in English, T-A-M, Tam. And then you feel so comfortable in her presence. And she wants you to be able to really keep that kind of comfort with you, because then you can manifest it to other beings. So you invite her, and she, after some time, and then she merges with you. And you feel yourself to be like a Tara. And you feel your body to be this glowing white, and holding this lotus and making this gesture. And with the syllable Tam in your heart, and all those many mantra syllables you can have in there too. You don't really, if you don't remember them exactly, never mind, but a lot of really meaningful and powerful seed letters are there in the wheel in the heart. And then you imagine that you repeat the mantra quietly and slowly. Om Tara Tutari Ture. Say. Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuruye Swaha Om Tari Tutari Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuruye Swaha Om Tari Tutari Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuruye Swaha Om Tari Tutari Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuruye Swaha Om Tari Tutari Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuriye Swaha Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuriye Swaha Om Tare Tutare Ture Mama Ayu Punya Jnana Pushtim Kuriye Swaha. So then you, after repeating that a certain amount of time, where you're invoking white Tara, although you yourself feel you are white Tara, but you're also invoking white Tara to help increase, use her miraculous power to increase your lifespan, your merit, and your knowledge, your intuitive knowledge, your wisdom, and push them kuriye, make it grow, swaha. Then by doing that, a white light comes out from your heart, from the tam at your heart. And the white light goes out, and it encases you in an energy force field that is pure white. And you feel very secure and comfy and very cooled down and cooled out inside this egg. Pure white, and in the space within the egg are all flower petals. So it's like it's air, and but they mingled in all flower petals, sweet scented flower petals, nurturing, healing flower petals. And then the tam emits yellow light rays in 360 degrees. All around, in total spherical, 360 degrees. And then those light rays go out and they bless all beings and remove all stigma of poverty and remove all kind of, floods and fires and people, untimely death and whatever, all negative things all around the world. And then the light rays come back and they draw with them all the power of the earth from everywhere in the earth. And they make a golden egg outside the white egg. And the golden yellow egg, but it's a transparent golden. And the yellow, transparent yellow egg is also in shielding, stabilizing all your earth element and making you feel very, very stable and solid. The white one is the water element, very connected and very in the flow, but then very stabilized. And then the tam at your heart produces a red light rays that shoot out in all directions spherically. And they go and they stir up people who are depressed, and people who are like suicidal, and people who are really unhappy and miserable. And they fire them up with some sort of passion. And they make them feel like there's something to be done, and there's a better place. There's a better world to make, and there's a better day to have, and it gets them going with that powerful ruby energy. And then those rays come back, and they form this red egg around outside the yellow egg. So you have white, which is the fire element. And the fire element draws out, if there's too much fire element in the environment, it draws out the fire element, draws it into the egg where it becomes excellent and stabilizes your fire element. And then the tam at your heart, and you should be able to do this while you're murmuring Om Taritu Tarituri Mama Ayu Punyanyana Pushtim Kuriye Swaha Om Taritu Tarituri Mama Ayu Punyanyana Pushtim Kuriye Swaha. So you can keep that sort of murmuring, and you can even, when you get used to it, which you can do quite easily, you just do a few hundred of them and it goes automatic. And you have a problem of your mind wandering because your mouth will just keep saying those words flawlessly. And then you can come to where you only pronounce them inwardly, so you don't actually have to make a sound. You hear them in your mind's ear. Yeah, like that. And that's good, because if you make a loud sound, or when you chant mantra, it a little bit tends to dissipate your concentration if you're doing a heavy important visualization at the same time. Okay, so then now we have white, yellow, and red eggs around us, stabilizing our water, earth, and fire element. And the next one we have I think it's blue. We have a dark blue, or maybe it's green, I forget. It may be green. We have a green one, and the thumb turns green and radiates a green light. And the green light forms a green egg outside the red egg. And the green egg is the element of wind. And we don't say air because wind connotes movement. And the essence of the wind element is movement. It's energy, vayu, means it moves. There's no such thing as still vayu. It always moves. If it's still, it's only potential vayu. Chala is the Sanskrit. So now we have a green egg there and stabilizing our energy level. So our warmth, our energy level, our golden solidity, and our flowing fluid liquidity are all well stabilized inside the eggs of white and yellow and red and green. And then the thumb turns into a deep dark blue color. And that blue color is the element of space. And that element in space has a kind of, is considered sometimes to be a kind of element. And just usefully. And then that one stabilizes one's inner spaces and, kind of balances them. So you have a blue one outside the green one. And then finally, to stabilize the whole nest of energy eggs in which you're totally rejuvenating, the solidity in your cells is nurtured, the fluidity in their interconnection is nurtured, the warmth of their ripening is nurtured from their growth, and the movement, the energies moving between them, linking them together, and then finally the space in which they can do that. All of that is all nurtured there, and everything is generated like that for you. And then the thumb turns soil-colored, brown. And the brown sort of enfolds the whole thing and kind of makes it connect to Mother Earth. Any, of course, piece of dirt on Earth or soil has in it elements of earth, water, fire, wind, space. It's not like dirt is automatically only the earth, the way that they understand the elements. They're just sort of principles. They know that. So then as long as you can concentrate in that field, you enjoy it. and you feel rejuvenated. And you affirm your oneness with the Tara, your sense of being Tara. And you will reach and it's fine to do that, and just take that energy. But then after a while, when you become a little more used to that kind of thing, you then are not content just to feel that yourself. And so you visualize all the beings around you. They, by the way, have been watching you, looking at you, and they see you as Tara. Remember, you're in this field where they're all around you, and you have the gurus in the sky and Tara in the sky above you. And the beings have been seeing you go through all these changes and lights radiating, and they see you in this like sci-fi looking quadruple or quintuple or sextuple egg. And they're very turned on, even though you're low key. At the end, you make it brown on the outside to be sort of earthy. But then you want to see them become that. And so and the best thing you can do in meditation at this point is you can visualize them like that. So then you visualize them as turning into Taras. You visualize them as having the white, yellow, red, green, blue, brown, waves around them, eggs around them, and being their own energies being beaten up, pumped up, and their own sufferings and pains driven away, and their ill health driven away, so that you sort of imagine everyone else, that you can resonate in such a way that everyone else goes through the same feelings that you can go through when you can visualize this clearly, and begin to really transfer your mind out of the ordinariness of being yourself, whoever your habitual self is, who doesn't really feel like I have big energy eggs like juicing me up all the time. But when you meditate on it, you can feel like that, and then you share that feeling visualizationally with another. And you can sometimes do it like where you want to heal a particular person, if you are caretaking some particular person, and you want to visualize them as Tara with these eggs and things around them. Or sometimes you can do it like lots of people. Imagine they're all doing like that, something like that. And in a way, it sort of gets to be easy, because since you're feeling like that yourself, you begin to sort of project that onto the other people. Since we always do have the habit of, whatever mood we're in, whatever our own inner tone is, we assume that others, we project that and assume that's the same tone in others. We tend to. So in that way, it's like I will become a Tara to bring all beings into Tarahood. Tara being the same as Buddha, but in very miraculous, miracle-working, wonder-working form. And then you can add to it all kinds of things to link you up between you and the Tara. You can make to link you up to your own, what they call Buddha pride, or divine identity, or divine or deity pride of yourself as, oh yeah, I'm Tara, You can allow yourself to feel that, knowing that it's just a illusory construct within emptiness. You can still allow yourself to play with that feeling, that divine pride, which goes with the messianic responsibility of being there, being Tara for the sake of other beings, of liberating them. Tara means a savioress, a messias, the one who has universal responsibility for all beings. And you can glow as you become more adept in visualizing. You're sort of more familiar with the art of Tara, and how the Tara is depicted by those great ancient yogis and mystics who actually met with her in visions and in meditations and in life sometimes. And think of that beauty as being pride of the beauty, the extraordinariness of the beauty of the Tara, sitting in the lotus on the moon seat cushion. And then think of all kind of offerings you are making, and think of the glory of it all. And however blissful it seems to you, orient that bliss toward emptiness, voidness, freedom. So you're sort of tasting bliss, void, indivisible, or bliss, freedom, indivisible. Because that's what Tara is really made of, and actually that's what such a Tara or Buddha sees beings as really made of that, actually, even though beings don't feel like that, the unenlightened ones. So here you're imagining it. But when you can do so in a stable, meditative way, you can really get a hint of feeling it. And then, some concluding things that you do, you sort of apologize to the deities, the Buddhas, for in case you did anything wrong, or you didn't meditate that well, or you had doubts in your mind, or you got distracted, or whatever, started thinking about something else. You make a little routine like that, and then you request them to go back to their palais, their Pure Land abode, and you shift yourself back to being. But actually, once you really get into it as a yogini, and you have initiation, and you make a retreat, and you really do it, then actually you do think of yourself as a Tara, even walking around. It becomes where you try to keep that all through the day. But you don't go around saying to people, oh yeah, no, I'm just Tara. You're able to be conventional, but you're sort of secretly thinking you're doing that. That's what you really are. You get like that. You should get like that. And then at the end of anything like that, you do some what they call thank you offerings. Again, you visualize giving all kind of beautiful things, and to all these divine beings, enlightened beings, and then you dedicate the merit and any knowledge gained through the meditation and the merit gained through the meditation, the different levels of meditation. You dedicate all of that to let it be a cause of my swift attainment of perfect Tarahood, perfect Buddhahood, for the sake of all beings, so that I can really be the one who really can help them accelerate their own progress into the bliss of nirvana, and the non-dual nirvana and samsara. And finally, so that's one Tara which we experimented with a little bit. And then there's another one. There's a red Tara. There's several red Taras. But the red one is kind of interesting, and I just wanted to share it with you. It's sort of on the path to the Vajrayogini, who is bright red, who is ruby. And the red form of the goddess is the dominatrix form, the powerful one. And Kurukala, she has a hook, like an elephant goad. It's like an elephant goad hook in one hand. And there are different forms of her. And another one, she has a bow made of flowers with flower arrow. And the bow string is made of a string of bees. But they're magical bees, so that she actually can shoot the arrow. And the arrow is the arrow that captivates the mind or fascinates whoever she strikes with the arrow. And so the dynamic one is where if you get good at it, and you get where you have to get initiated, of course, and if you get good at it, you can then sort of think of a situation in the world where the Dharma is being oppressed, or where people are being harmed, where they're losing their medicine, or their doctors, or their hospital, or their caretakers, and you can shoot your arrow toward the mind of the evildoer who is doing that harmful thing to them, and you can attract them with your beauty and your arrow, and you can cause them to think more benevolently and more lovingly in a sort of very powerful and dominant way. Not just say, gee whiz, I wish they wouldn't be like that. Of course, that involves not settling into whatever they think they are supposed to be thinking, and whatever their limits of thinking are, you crash right through that when you're in that curricula mode. You know, she dances up on one foot like that, and she's got her bow and arrow and her hook and her lasso, you know, the four-armed one, you know, a hook and a goat hook and a lasso. So you can just imagine doing that. I think what's Ariana Huffington, I think, is a bit like that. In her great book about the pigs at the trough, you know, about the 0.01%. That was really quite good, I thought. So that's where you're extending your positive, loving, liberating, you know, saving, you know, goddess energy into turning the thoughts of the world in the direction you think they should go, which is towards gentleness, love, beauty, creativity, and not greed and harmfulness and dark behavior and dark thoughts and dark actions. You know. So you might learn about, as you go along, you might learn about the red forms also. The white ones are this pacifying, you know, the yellow ones are prospering. If you want to raise a lot of money to save some children in some terrible African country or something, then you can do the yellow one of the yellow taras, and perform wealth meditations, abundance meditations, and then you can do the dominating thing, and then heaven forbid you have to do the destructive one, just really dealing with the really bad eggs. But the only time when a bodhisattva would be actually destroy some entity, even a demon, would be in the line of preventing that demon from doing things to, not only from preventing them from harming the beings that they're harming, but preventing them from accumulating the evolutionary momentum by harming others, of receiving so much further harm themselves. And so sometimes you can't fasten them in your lasso and get them to think more positively and more creatively and with more love by the dominating thing. And then you have to be like Durga, you know, you have to be, or Kali, you know, you have to be more ferocious, you know. But you have all of those potentials, is the point. You're totally capable of all four of them. And this is the many great yogis in Tibet and in India too, they only did Tara. That's all they did. The Tara was the one. You know? Her male counterpart in the different Buddha families is Amoga Siddhi, which means the never in vain, the one who has achieved being never in vain. Amoga Siddhi, never futile. So he's the male counterpart of working miracles, and all accomplishing, and actually it connects to the transmutation of the addictive poison, mental poison of envy and jealousy. What stops the good from thriving and from triumphing always is that people who are trying to do it tend to be too competitive with one another and jealous, and so they don't work together. And then they can't perform miracles. So I think it's kind of fun. And the green color is the color. Like a green-eyed, we have the idea of a green-eyed monster, right? So anyway, we dedicate the merit of this little bit of meditation to becoming a perfect Tara and perfect Buddha for the sake of all beings, as soon as possible, since they need a lot of help. Any question? I want to say one thing to everybody, just to say that I'm so happy. I'm always so happy when Richard and Mary come. This is my last class. We have 2 more talkathons together tonight and tomorrow morning. But this is the last class I'm doing solo. And I'm just always so happy. It's really, really special, I feel. And somehow, you know, the Buddha tradition was nested in with all the other Indian traditions, which were all very pluralistic, always have been. Because India is not one country; it's like 100 countries. And city-states it was in those days. Then there were different empires, then multiple empires, and multiple languages and so on. But during that period, from the mid or early first millennium before the Common Era, to the beginning of the second millennium of the Common Era, the Buddhist-Hindu interaction, symbiosis, was really good actually, and they enriched each other, and it was really nice the way it was fitted together. And sometimes they were debates, and they had disagreements and conflicts and things, but they never had that I know of, a religious war. But they did have competition. They had intellectual battles. The philosophers always do have battles. And so I always feel that when Richard and Mary represent like India as it is, this spiritual side of India as it is. And there's this amazing thing happening in the 20th and 21st century, which is that due to the shattering of Tibet by the military-industrial lifestyle, mediated through the poor Chinese people who used to have better cooking and were more relaxed and never did go out to conquer the world. They refrained from sending out they sent out their Columbus, but then they came back because they preferred to stay in China. And instead of conquering and genociding the people which they found. But they went out in much bigger ships than Columbus had in the 100 years earlier, at least. So anyway, I love therefore, yes, the Tibetans are bringing back this Buddhist component in India. I think I told you the story, Richard, and I believe, of Dhirendranath Shastri, famous Indian philosopher, professor at Agra University, who was a specialist in Nyaya Vaisheshika, all the way through from the original Sutra, Vaisheshika Sutra, Nyaya Sutra, all the way through to the Navya Nyaya, in Bengal and so on, in the second millennium. But then there was this huge problem that he couldn't figure out what the great Shastrakaras, the makers of the treatises of the Nyayikas, what they were debating about when they started writing long commentaries, which their only ones extant are a good 800 years after the original sutra. And although they quote intervening ones that were written earlier, but they still, and then who they debating with, and then nobody could answer his questions. He went to the Vidyalayas of Mysore, of Calcutta, of Bombay, of Madras, Chennai, everywhere he went, Bangalore. He went to all the places where all the Brahmins were, and no one could answer his question. And then he read a book by a Russian, Sherbatsky, called Buddhist Logic. And he was introduced to the writings of Dignaga and Dharmakirti through Sherbatsky. And then he found there are a few Sanskrit texts left of theirs, not all of them, but some of them, some parts of them. And it blew his mind. And in his book, great book that he wrote, called Critique of Indian Realism, he has a parampara in Sanskrit in the dedication page, and he has to spell Sherbatskaya, Russian in Sanskrit, not easy to spell. And it's like, that is the great scholarly effort of the age that unfortunately is not being pursued, which is to reconnect each strand of tradition with that long interaction period, which was so creative and fertile, because the caste system was eroded, and there were these big universities where people would go from any caste, and so the monasteries had become the cores of big universities. So it was really quite marvelous. So anyway, I feel I taste that. This place, we just never changed the metal letters. We're so for 15 years now. But Nina insisted from the beginning this room was to be called, or this building is to be called the Nalanda Conference Center. Nalanda Conference Center, which was the most famous university. But that was one of many. But someday we'll get Nalanda. Now it just says Conference Center. We'll put Nalanda Center. Please remind me, Justin, to do that when on downtime. Any other questions? Last words, comments of this set of things? As it turned out, a number of us who were here, who were at the Kala Chakra in Bodh Gaya, did receive this initiation from the Dalai Lama. This Chejana Rinpoche, which is in the same lineage, because Chejana Rinpoche was his junior tutor, and he received himself through Chejana Rinpoche. This particular form of Tara, Chinta Chakra. No? Silence of the sages, of the yoginis. Oh, okay. Oh, Kara. Yes.
When you spoke of the chakras, you said that it was a software.
Yes.
But then when we speak of the Vayus, the
You see the
Nada, the Vayu, Nada, and Bindu,
Yes.
it does become something that is material, right?
Well, yeah. So software is material. Software is material. It's just flexible. It's fluid. It's not just one thing. In other words, we don't have to have a battle over, no, the heart chakra faces this way, it is that color, the other. It's the central nervous system, and it can be programmed this way or that way.
Right.
But programming is physical. It's a pattern. It holds energy. It has to be somewhat physical.
But we do have in our form now, in our physical form now, the Bindu, the Vayu, and the Nada. So
We have chakras, you're saying?
we
Well,
have
sort of. You can say that.
the Bindu.
I wish I could show the picture. You
Yeah.
can say that we have chakras, but in a way they're kind of knotted off, and there's no sort of wheel or flower. Chakra means, of course, a wheel, but then they're presented like flowers with petals, and then whatever, It's not like there's a thing like that. But you can impose a patterning like that, which will then channel the Vayu, will travel in patterns like that. There's a meditation that you can, actually, we could do that meditation. You could, since no one has any question, we have a couple of minutes. What you do is do it. Do one little last meditation. We'll do it. Okay? Go in meditative mode. Imagine that central channel we talked about yesterday, Sushumna or Avaduti, and think of it as fairly good size, like bigger than a fat straw, like a tube. Okay? And then imagine your own awareness as like a little eye, or a little being that's mostly just eye, that's inside that central channel. Okay? And then you can start out with that little awareness being, with the visual awareness, in the center of the central channel there, at the level of the heart center. But that's, of course, in the center of the body, back near the spine, in front of it. It's not the spinal column itself, it's in front of it. And then imagine that you turn clockwise 360 degrees. Imagine you're facing forward to start with, and in front of you is a little opening of a tube. And then every 45 degrees is another tube in this little chamber you're in. And imagine your awareness turns and sees those 8 tubes. Okay? It looks down the 8 tubes. And sort of with your look, your wishing look, it sort of smooths the tubes and makes them sort of open and pliant, and they feel kind of rubbery and lively, springy. And then just spin round like that and see the 8 tube openings. And then if you wanted to get more into it, you would go into into any one of them, and then you would see that divide in 2, actually in 3. There'd be 3 tube openings, they would be like white, blue, and red, the interiors of the next set of channels, etc. You can do that. But then what you do is, because you're in the central channel, then let your little point of awareness, you've sort of looked through those 8 things, then let your awareness sort of rise up in the central channel, hitch a ride with the Dana Vayu or Prana Vayu, and just go up the central channel to the throat level. And then you come into the same kind of a chamber in the throat level. But here you have straight ahead in front of you a little tube opening. in the wall of the chamber. And then you have 1, 2, 3. So there's 4 in the sector as you turn to the right until you're 90 degrees, you know. There's 3, therefore, in between. Okay? So this is going to be 16. You're going to see a total. And then you're going to spin around very slowly, looking tube by tube, looking into each tube, like shining a light in it. And there's the front tube right in front of you. Almost that's considered the east, actually, is wherever you're facing. And then you go toward the south. And then there are 3 tubes that you look down. And then you come to the one that's on a right angle. And then you do keep turning, and then there's 3 more. And then you're looking straight back to the west. And then again 3 more, and you're going to the north. And 3 more, you come back to the east. So that you have a sense of being in this little central chamber, and you're looking out through 16 of these little tubes. Just to sort of get used to the living in the software, in the hologram. And then you could, after you do that, if you're trying to do each one, you're probably only 6 or 7 around. Then you can go up again, up the central channel, and come up to the crown level under your skull. And then you have 32 little holes in the wall of the same kind of little chamber. And you go around and you smooth out all 32 of those. So that is sort of a visualization of yourself with a subtle awareness, traveling around an ideal imagination of a chakra system. Now, when you say there's something really there, well, if you do that, you're going to get sensations in your nervous system. You will feel, if you do it meditatively with real concentration, you will feel things in your system. You will. And it can be quite strong if you have done it a lot. And but it isn't like you find a bunch of wheels there. You have all these complicated nerves, and you kind of smooth them out into something like that in your mind. But it's like, in a way you're making a structure, and then the micro level of that structure is like, it's like one of those things you write on, the kids will write on to write letters, and then they shake it or they turn a little thing and it all wipes out what they wrote. So in that sense, as I said, it's software, not hardware. And then later you get to where there's deities in these different petals, right in the central chamber, and then they move around and do things. And then each one of those tubes leads to a particular part of the body, and then the deity is the tube, and the female is the inside of the tube, the male is the outside of the tube, and then one is out on the body and one is in at the heart chamber and so on. Oh, there's all kind of really fantastic things. But you have to develop one pointedness first, for example, and that takes, to be able to really do that, and there you might just look at anything and then develop the ability to absolutely hold your mind stock still for quite a period of time. And that's tough. Okay? Oh, one thing. Yesterday I had a discussion about the multiple life perspective with Chodong, which is still, I agree with Buddha, is the most useful biological theory that any proto-Darwinian or neo-Darwinian could even imagine, because it connects to the lives of people, it makes them understand and some experience their own biology. But anyway, in talking about it, she asked me, which I never properly answered, like, how do you get to see how that feels, and how do you really see that? And then I said, you read a lot of stuff, but I didn't really get into the list. we have the narrative of the one life, and there's so many things. Go for it. You only live once. You know what I mean? There are all these slogans people say in bars, which are all totally intuitive to us. We think, oh, that's correct, right? We'll think that. So the point is, there's like a collection in Sanskrit which has been translated by various people called the Katha Sarit Sagara, the ocean of streams of stories. Then the Buddha started it off a lot, actually. Some of the earliest of these kind of animal stories and things come from the Buddha's Jatakas, what are called Jatakas. Jataka means his recounting of a previous life. And when he was a monkey king, and what he did, when he was the deer king. I love it when he was the deer king. Do you know that one? He was the king of the deer. Does you all know that one? He was the king of these marvelous deer. And he was very long-lived, and he was big, and had the antlers, and he was golden, kind of like pelt. And he made a deal with the king of Benares many aeons, a long time ago, many centuries before the time of Buddha, whatever. And he could talk, that deer. And so he made a deal, and he said, you send your hunters out for venison, and they just shoot up a storm, and they kill a lot more of my herd than they need to, that you need, your majesty, and that people really need. And then they just leave the carcasses to rot, and only a little bit of it is used. So I tell you what, we'll have a lottery on our deer community, and one deer will show up at the kitchen every day for your majesty, and then leave the other deer alone, okay? We'll come freely of our own accord. Send the hunters off somewhere else to do something else. So this had been made by maybe the father or grandfather of the current king. And then it so happened that one day there was a doe whose turn came up, but she was quite pregnant. And she was running around the herd asking someone to swap places with her, promising to take their place or even move them a day later by inserting herself in the queue the minute she had given birth and brought up to the point this young one was, why kill two? But nobody would change their thing. No one would switch days with her. And so she was disconsolate, and this came to the attention of the king of the deer. So he said, oh, no problem, I'll take your turn. So then he went, and then he came to the kitchen, and like, okay, I'm here for dinner. And then the cook was freaked, because A, the thing was talking, and B, it was so glorious and radiant, and he thought it might be a magic deer, and so the cook didn't butcher him right away, and instead he sent a messenger up to the king through the different flunkies, and he said, to tell the king he has to come down to make a decision about the menu tonight. I can't do this on my own. Please forgive me, your majesty. And so the king came down, and then the king saw that this was the deer, and he asked him why he had come. And why, well, you're the king, why are you coming, And then the Buddha/king of the deer said, well, I'm coming because I'm the king, and I'm responsible for everything, and I made the deal with your grandfather. And this doe, I agree with the doe, there's no sense killing her fawn as well as herself. So I'm going to giving myself, I have lots of meat. We can smoke some of it and keep it in the icebox. And then the king freaked, and he said, wow, you are really giving me a lesson. You're better than me. I'm into this thing like, well, the king sends out the soldiers to die. The king never goes out and risks their life. You're a king who gives your life for your subject. That's amazing. I think we won't eat any of you guys anymore. And then they were vegetarians after that. And they didn't eat the king either. And then they didn't eat the doe either anymore. So there's thousands of those stories. And there's some humorous and weird ones, too. There's some really fun and weird ones. One I like particularly is about ethics. It's called Mahabodhi. And there was this guy who was a sage, and he was a favorite of a certain king. And the king was his patron, and he had a meditation hut in the garden of the king, and the king used to take teachings from him and so on. And then some evil ministers, 6 ministers, started bad-mouthing the guy and saying that he was like giving bad advice to the king, and he really had designs on power, and the king's favor was spoiling him, and he was going to ruin the kingdom, etc. And they poisoned the king's mind against him. So he then, when the king went over to him one day, who wasn't he was in denial that his mind was poisoned. And then he said to the king, he said, I think I'm going to leave. I'm going to the forest for a while, Thank you, Your Majesty, you're so kind to have me living here. But I think I will leave now because, it's a problem, The king said, no, it's not a problem. I want you to stay. But then the king's dog, who was there, started growling at the sage. So then the sage, yeah, you were saying that, Your Majesty, but your real feelings are betrayed by your dog, who is now, you are thinking these bad thoughts and the dog is growling, and that dog used to always like to be petted by me. So it means your mind has turned. So I think I'm not going to press the point. And he left. And then the bad ministers all gave advice to the king. They were thrilled to get rid of this real sage. And they were giving horrible advice to the king because one of them was a nihilist. One of them was a fatalist. One of them was some kind of extremist. And they were all different kinds of extremists, in other words. And they were saying to the king, it doesn't matter what you do, or don't bother with that, or everybody will be dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. You don't have to do any public works. You don't have to help the sick or the old. In other words, the country was going to ruin. There was too much poverty and too many thieves, and too much violence was not controlling it, and so on. So then the sage, sort of with his clairvoyance, he knew this from afar. And he felt sorry for the citizens, for the king, who was his old friend, and for the citizens. So he thought, well, I really shouldn't step out of the way of those idiots who are giving him bad advice. So he created a magic monkey. He manifested a monkey. He emanated a monkey. And then he killed the monkey and skinned it. But it was just his emanation. But anyway, so then he came into the court, like as if he was visiting, with a dripping, grisly, wet, fresh monkey skin. And then, because he was an old friend of the king received him respectfully. He was a little freaked out with the blood dripping off the monkey skin. But he thought, well, holy men, they do weird things. And wasn't saying anything. And then all the 6 ministers went completely nuts. And they said, you are horrible. Now we really see your true nature. Because they were afraid he was going to come back, So they said, you look at that poor animal you killed. That's really terrible. You slaughtered some monkey, then you go around wearing its unsanitary skin. It's horrible, all this kind of thing. So they went on and on about it. So then he says, why to them? And then each one gives their dumb philosophy, and on the basis of that philosophy, they have no reason why he shouldn't have killed that monkey. The monkey's really just a matter, and there's no soul. B, it is fatal. That was the karma of the monkey. All A, B, C, all their different theories. So he proved that their theories made it perfectly all right to do any heinous thing. And then the king is really impressed that these ministers who are giving him how to run the country are unable to come up with a sensible reason of why you would be kind and gentle with the monkey and nonviolent with the monkey. And so then, after finishing them off, the sage, he whips off the wet monkey skin and he brings the monkey back to life. And the monkey scampers off and goes and jumps in the garden in a tree. And the king sees the light and so on. And then those 6 guys become 6 people in the Buddha's life who argue with the Buddha about the nature of reality and lose also. So they're very, but they have all these little things, like the thing about the dog barking, growling, they're such great storytellers. Actually, there's one Sanskrit scholar I know who found 40% of the stories in the Decameron came from the Indian stories, because he didn't have to give copyright notice or whatever in those days. Boccaccio, that's the Renaissance. Through Persia, these things came, Okay, I think it's dinner time. Thank you a lot. And the great yoginis. And the great teacher. Well, we're meeting again tonight, right? We're chatting again tonight. We're going to have some fun tonight. I had some great pictures of the pelvic floor. But this thing doesn't work. I showed you the previous times. Remember the Australian who paints these things? The neural net. It just won't work.
I'm going to see how to fix it during the break.
Maybe.
Yeah, Bob, can you send the slides to me as an attachment and I can forward them to everybody too?
Oh.
I can edit them. tidy them up.
Well, maybe in the future, maybe something. I have to make it a little bit neater to do that way when I'm not commenting it. But I will, yeah.
We
Something
do
like
have a.
This video was brought to you in part through the generous support of Tibet House US membership community and viewers like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit tibethouse.us. Thanks for watching. Tashi Delek.